Hey, here's a video going over pre-writing 1. So you've read the instructions, but this just gives you examples and shows you and gives you some tips on doing it. So without further ado, let's get to it. When you describe, you want to really aim at painting a picture of your object in your readers' minds. But in an essay, that's more than just giving the basic details. You got to think about what you want to describe, what descriptions best help, communicate your ideas to your readers, also what things you don't have to describe so you don't end up condescending to or boring your readers. And so here's a quick, there's two of those. Here are quick keys to description. First two have to do with what you do and don't describe. One is you describe the unique qualities and you avoid describing the common or assumed qualities. So for example, when I say, I'm in my office, right? Obviously you can see a little bit of it here, but you can't see the rest. But just the word office gives you an idea of what it is. You imagine there's a door somewhere in here. You imagine there's probably a desk that these things you can't see are on. There may be a place for students to sit down, a chair or something like that. There may be, obviously there's a file cabinet. There may be a shelf. Do I have to tell you there's 4 walls? Do I have to tell you there's a door? You kind of probably pictured that. So if I don't have to say all the little details, right? I mean, we're really looking at little details, but you gotta pick which ones. To say there are 4 walls, no. Now, if I said my office has 5 walls, that's unique. I probably might want to talk about the walls then, right? If it has a window that you can't see, then that might be important. I have a picture of a window. That's my window. Okay? But so whenever you're thinking about that, think about what are things that people already, when we say a word, they already picture it. If I say the word dog or cat, and you have or have ever had a dog or a cat, you're probably picturing one of those, right? Or somebody right? Or if you've never had one and people you're around don't have dogs or cats, you have this kind of generic dog or cat picture in your head. And so we can rely on our readers to bring a lot to description, but we want to look at the unique details. So even though most offices have walls, not all of them, I don't need to say 4. If there were 5, most offices have those. That's pretty unique. So when you're thinking about your object, think about what's unique about it. If it's a ring, it's probably going to be roundish, right? It may be made out of gold or silver, which are pretty common, but what's unique, right? And of course you can just say round. I can say on my office walls are these things. So there's the first two. Use concrete words. So concrete words are specific. Instead of saying my walls are green, I would say they're a light green, or maybe a seafoam green, or sage green, depending on how I want to describe it. Instead of saying, I heard a loud sound, you could say, I heard a whack, or bang, or whatever it was, right? Use as many sensory details as you can. Not just it looks like this, but what does it feel like? Is it soft? Is it rough? Is there a smell, a sound, a feel, a taste? Now, you don't need to go licking all your objects, right? Depends on what you're writing about. If you're writing about, your old, soccer shoes, you don't need to go lick them, okay? You might smell them, right? But be concrete and use those different kinds of feelings. Use figures of speech. Sometimes when people do description, they want to say, well, I just can't describe it. Your job in this essay is to describe, and so you can't write, I can't describe it. So there are things you can describe, and then there will be other things that you may be like, well, how do I get that exact in words? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you use a figure of speech to compare it to something. You say he was as tall as a tree, does not mean somebody was literally as tall as an actual tree. It means they're very tall, right? As quiet as a mouse doesn't mean they're literally as quiet as a mouse. Mice can't be just physically their vocal cords as loud as we might be. So, but it's that perception. So you can compare it to things. right? And the other way we can describe doesn't have anything to do with what it looks like, but it's that dominant impression, the emotional description, the feeling, the vibe you get. So those are kind of key things to help you describe. Now let's take a look. Let me show you what that looks like, okay? So I have this book. So if I, if I say my copy of my book, Elmer Gantry, is very important to me. It's blue and orange, very old, and was given to me by my friend Amy. You get it, but do you really imagine or see it? You don't get an understanding of Amy and what she means to me. So let me try again by just describing the details that I can think of about this book using that criteria, those tips I gave you. So here's my detailed list. Woven cloth covering. Smells like dust and mold. The binding on the left is a bright orange. Small wisps of thread are coming off the binding. It was published in 1929. The front and back covers are slate blue. Behind the frayed cloth binding on the outer corners, you can see the cardboard. Between the R and the Y of Gantry, the remnant of a price tag or sticker. Inscribed, to Kelly from Boston's Brattle Bookstore, Amy. The pages are faded to manila and darker around the edges. The paper has a very coarse texture. It's thick. The novels of Grace Livingston Hill are advertised at the back of the book. Inside the back, between the cover and the spine, you can see the netting. So what I did was I took this book, which I have in my hand, and I looked at it. I smelled it, I said it smells like dust and mold, and, I touched it, I looked at it, I said, what is this, right? And so I just wrote those things down, just words and phrases, and that's all you need to do. If you don't have the thing, then, and it was yours or someone else's, and you've held it and touched it before, close your eyes and really, literally look at it in your mind, right? See as much of it as you can in your mind, and write down all of those things you can think of. All of those things, okay? And then the other thing I'm going to do is the dominant impression. So how does it feel? So I can go beyond the physical descriptions and look at these things. I ask myself, what does this book really feel like? What's its essence? And so my answer there is old, well-loved, fun, permanent. Like, those words describe, like, how that book feels to me. If I'm working to describe the person who gave it to me, I ask how it represents her. So my friend Amy, adventurous, she traveled to Boston, love of old books, knows me, I love the movie Elmer Gantry, and she watched it with me, so she knew I'd love to read the book. And so all of those things kind of come together that give me this overall feel for it. And for Amy, because whenever I see that book, or I think of the book, or I think of the movie anymore, I think of Amy as one of my closest friends. So when I put it all together, there's my whole list. That's what it is. And when we look at the pre-writing, let me go here. When we look at the pre-writing, that's your job. Write down as many words, phrases, and sentences as you can to describe your object. Use all the senses you can: sight, touch, smell, taste, and sound. Describe the size, color, shape, texture. Think about its weight and feel. Consider its emotional tone or vibe, the dominant impression. List the traits or significant things about the person who owns it or who it represents, if that applies. Every detail you can think of. Your job is to get as many details and descriptions about it down as possible. Use the example I gave in the slideshow here to give you ideas how to develop your descriptions. You should have a list that is at least 1 to 1.5 pages long. And so that is, I lost my mouse. I don't know where it went. There we go. That is what your job is for Prewriting 1. It is literally just a list. People struggle with this because they try to make it harder than it is. Whatever it is you're describing, just describe it. If you're describing your phone, oh, look, I'm going to say, it's got, Charlie Brown and Snoopy. Oh, I got these the other day. I don't know what I spilled on it, but I tried to wipe it off and it stained my cover is very old, right? I'm going to look at all those things, this part where I can see on it, like you can see it's kind of faded there, where, look, that's where I hold it, right? So all of those different things, I'm going to look at those things and say the chip here, the, tough armor, that's what it is, right? All of those things, I'm just going to write those down. It may be words, it may be phrases. If it comes out of you as sentences, that's okay too. Let it come out the way it is. But all it is a list. That's all you're doing. Right now for Prewriting 1, you just describe it. So you're going to do your list and then go wherever you're supposed to turn it in, okay? And turn that in, by the due date, okay? And that's your job. And you do that Prewriting, you just kind of really notice those details, think through those things, and it's turned in on time, and it's a 100. Cool beans? Okay? So, again, describe those unique qualities. You can avoid describing the common or assumed qualities. Use concrete words. Use sensory details, right? As many senses as you can. Use figures of speech and describe that dominant impression. And that's your job for this. So really, that's it. Take care. Let me know if you have questions. Trust yourself. Don't make it harder than it is. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.